Hi guys! Today we're going to be making felt stuffies, and you can either look up a pattern on the computer or you can make a design yourself. So I'm doing a little skunk, and so what I started doing, actually, I started making a sketch and I only drew half of the body. I'm going to simply fold that in half right there, and I'm going to, once I fold it, I'm going to cut it while it is folded together. This is just to make a pattern so that I know what I need when I'm going to be cutting out my actual stuffy. I have the basic body shape of my skunk. And it doesn't matter if you see some lines and you don't see other lines. Then I am going to go ahead. I have a tail that I also cut out and fold it in half. Because I don't have two tails, I just have one. And I'm going to use these pieces right here to go ahead and make my felt pieces. Then I went ahead and I added on the details. These are details that you don't necessarily have to cut out later on, but you can, but it's just for me to see how I like my little skunk. So I think the tail's pretty good. I think the body's pretty good. I went ahead and labeled all the white spots so I can remember I need to cut out white pieces to put on top. The awesome part about felt, guys, is you don't need to worry about it running. So once you cut, you don't have to worry that the edge is going to fray. So we're going to get started. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fold my felt in half. You always want to make the best use of your material as you can. So I'm going to work right near the edge, but I'm going to make sure my piece is folded in half. If you don't have scissors that can cut through two pieces of felt, my other suggestion would be go ahead and cut one piece at a time and then cut a second piece. So I went ahead and I cut out two pieces that are exactly the same, the front and the back, okay? And we're gonna be sewing those together. So I'm just gonna lay that aside. Notice they're not exactly perfect. They're the same front and back, but they, like, my two ears are slightly different. And there's a little bit of extra material around the whole thing. That's okay. Precision is a little tricky with felt. So again, I'm laying this right on top, and then I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I don't move that. I have to make sure the felt is lined up as straight as possible so that I don't get part of a tail on one of my cuts. So I'm lining this up, taking it right here. If you line up part of your edge on the edge, it's easier. So then I go ahead and I'm cutting out to the best of my ability that shape. If you have a white Sharpie or a white piece of chalk, you can also trace your tail or your pieces right onto your felt, and you don't have to worry about trying to hold the paper in the same position while you cut. You can also use a pin to hold your paper onto your cloth. I'm at camp, so I am limited in some capacity, so I am just going to hold it on here, and it is totally doable. And if you don't like the exact shape that your tail is in or whatever felt pieces you are cutting, you can go back and just change the shape just a little bit and say, oh, I want a little bit more depth right here. Okay, I need to curve this part right here a little bit more, and that's okay. Just remember to keep your pieces together while you're cutting them. Otherwise, you're going to have one piece that's very different than your other piece. Okay, and then flip it over and just double check that you have their sides are the same. Mine are the same. I'm ready to go. So I've cut out all the pieces based on my plan. I didn't cut this out the way I could have. I did on the tail. So I cut out parts of the tail. So this was the white part. I cut it out and I used it as a template to cut out that white piece. I put it on my white felt and I was able to cut right around it. If you don't need it to be exactly the same, it's also pretty easy just to redraw it on a piece of felt or cut it out. So I have all my pieces. They're just laying there. If you have a hot glue gun, my suggestion is to put a dab of glue underneath here and stick it right on. Stick on all your pieces on top, and then we will sew the front and the back together. I don't have a hot glue gun, so I'm going to be sewing all the pieces on together. Okay, so I just sewed that piece on. I'm going to do the running stitch. I put a knot in the other end of my string. I'm just going to go from the back, go up through, and then I'm going to put the needle right back down almost in the same spread. I'm stitching down right next to the other one, pulling all my thread through, and then going up. So this should be a pretty quick stitch. Don't pull it too tight. And I'm just I'm just attaching these stripes right onto my cloth. So I have now stitched on the stripes on my tail. I'm going to stuff this with batting before I put them together. If you don't have batting, some things you could use: ripped up newspaper, you could use pom-poms, you could use other cloth. Okay, so I just spent some time stitching on these. I really highly recommend that hot glue, but I just did the quick running stitch all the way through. The back looks really ugly, but that doesn't matter. Just make sure you tie them off, otherwise your pieces will run away. Just going to do that basic first knot of tying your shoe, make a loop, pull it through, double that, and then you have your string locked on. So once it's locked on, I'm cutting it off, leaving a little tail. Make sure all those tails stay inside when you go to sew your two pieces together. So now I need to find some backing or some batting or some sort of thing to make it fluffy. Since I don't have batting, I'm actually layering a bunch of my scraps that I just cut. They can just go right inside. It's just going to add a little thickness to it. No big deal. I also switched the color of my thread because I am now sewing black to black instead of a white on black. I'm layering this right on top. I'm going to start with my needle inside here. I'm going to pull it through like that. Make sure that edge of the knot stays on the inside. And then I'm going to keep it held close together. I don't have pins. This is a good time to use your pins if you have them. And I'm doing something called the whip stitch. I'm going down and up. So on this one, it's just always going down. You go down through the top, and then you pull your thread through, and you always go down through the top again. Going right around the outside, doing that same stitch, keeping your fabric close together, trying to line it up the best you can. If your thread goes around the side, it's okay, just pull it back. And it's closing it up nicely. The stitch reminds me of stitches if you were to ever get stitches from the hospital. They pull two pieces of your skin together and they do something like this. This is a little less painful, a little prettier. And I'm just going right around the edge. And I'm always going to go down through the fabric every single time, going all the way around. And it locks it all up. So now I have the tail stuffed, and I actually am not going to lock it off right here. If I was using batting, maybe I would, but because this is getting stuffed into the inside of my other piece right here, I'm just going to let that be for a second. So again, I added a whole bunch of scrap felt to go inside mine. The other piece I'm going to do is I'm going to add that on, but first I'm going to start sewing it around the outside. So I've gotten halfway around, and I'm just going to continue doing that same stitch. On this one, I'm just choosing to go up every time. You could do go down every time. It's your choice. It doesn't really matter one way or the other as long as you keep it consistent.
Can I do what you are doing?
I'm making a stuffy. Are you going to make a stuffy?
Yeah.
That'd be very fun, huh?
Can I make a stuffy?
Now that one I went twice because I got it too far off the edge. So I'm just continuing around like this all the way.
This looks like fun.
It is pretty fun, huh? I'm going to continue on until I get down to where I have to sew the tail in. Because the tail is a separate piece right now.
What is this?
So I'm adding in the skunk's tail now. Again, this would be a lot easier if you have pins. So I am still going to be doing the whip stitch. One second, I don't want to... you can. One second. I am going to pull it up, and this time I'm going back down through. We're going back to the running stitch. Make sure you get the fabric right there and go right back down through. You want to make sure you're getting 4 layers of fabric. You're getting both the layers on the tail as well as both the layers on the body. And you might want to go back and forth a couple times in there in case you missed. Yep, pull that through, please.
Okay.
All the way through. Good.
But can I hold
then you got to poke it through again right there.
Nope.
Because otherwise the tail will fall off. So we poke it through. Watch your finger on the other side. Okay, pull it through. Good. And then down. Right there. Yep. Make sure we get that part. Yep. Good. Pull it through. Good work. Then we get to this end and we need to go back to the whip stitch. So we're going around the outside, and so I'm only going up again all the way until I get to this other spot right here. And then I'm going to tie my knot. I'm doing that first step of tying my shoe. When you cut this time, make sure you don't cut too close. If you cut too close, all your stitches that you just made will come out. So I'm leaving a little bit. I have my skunk. Want to say it again?
Here's the skunk.
Yeah, and it's three-dimensional. It's got a little bit of width to it. We have the tail and the eyes, and really you can make anything. If you want to just do a heart, you could do a heart. If you want to do emoji, you could do an emoji. Yeah, you're showing them the needle. Make sure you put away the needle when you're done, so not small children don't get a hold of it. Thanks for sewing with me.